Welcome back to another episode of DIY or Die, and today we're going to be talking about welders. So let's get this thing started. In terms of any tool, especially welders, because they can be quite expensive, you're going to want to narrow down, slowly narrow down your choices. So to begin with that, you want to start with a price point you want to spend. So is it $500? Is it 5,000? They can go even higher than that, but depends on how much money you want to spend on a welder. So find the price you want to spend, and then suit that with your situation or application for the welder. So are you doing thin sheet metal? Are you doing, say, non-ferrous things? Or are you doing heavy-duty plate welding? It all depends. Like MIG, for example, would be good for MIG would be good for things like sheet metal work, all the way up to like maybe 1/4 inch. I mean, MIG can go higher than that, but it's you're going to be spending more money on a MIG welder than most general purpose and DIYers should spend. So MIG, yeah, I would say MIG's good for your body work on a car to all the way up to 1/4 inch steel. TIG, kind of a jack of all trades. It can do anything basically perfectly fine. You can do thin stuff with TIG. You can do big stuff with TIG. It's good on everything, really. You just got to change out your tool tips and stuff like that. And then, of course, there's SMAW, but it's also known as stick. That's what I got here. Stick's good for thicker metals. So I mean, you can do thin metals, but it's a lot harder, and you're better off using MIG. So sticks for I don't know, maybe 16 gauge and up. Pretty easy. I mean, I don't know. It's good for thicker stuff though. So and not only that, but you also don't have any gas required. You just buy these electrodes right here. You just get them in little sticks or packs or whatever. 7018s. Those are great. 6013s if you like those. I recommend a stick to be great at is 7018. It's a good all around stick. And if you want to get in the welding trade, go with 7018. But so yeah, once you found out kind of what type of welder you're gonna get for your situation, then you want to determine if you want to get a new welder or a used one. So this one's clearly a used welder. I bought it used because these brand new are thousands. I think they're like 2,500 brand new. These Ideal Arcs, they're basically industrial machines. These, but I honestly, if for the DIYer or just like even small mechanics or garages, any of that type of thing, I would buy a used welder, to be honest, because the price difference it's quite huge actually, especially for stick welders. They don't really they sell for pretty cheap nowadays, but buy a used one. That's what I'd recommend. A good used one, good condition. So like, you know, this one's in good condition. There's no scrapes or anything like that. It hasn't been abused. You can even it depends on the person who you're buying from, but see if you can take the top off the machine, or see if you can take a side panel off or something. That way, if it's a transformer type like this one, check if the windings are burnt or anything or cooked. Then you know if it's been shorted out or something. This one obviously isn't. Then you want to check for dust in the machine. You want to check, basically, when you're buying them, just look for the overall environment that machine was in. So if it was in a dirty environment, then you probably don't want to buy it because, well, if you're running a dirty shop, then you probably skip out on a lot of maintenance for things too. So yeah, definitely I would say go for a used welder. And depending, like I said, depending on what you're doing, I would go stick or MIG, because TIG is it's harder to do. It's Yeah, I don't know if it's the hardest. It's definitely harder than MIG though. Stick is definitely harder than MIG too. TIG and stick are. TIG would be the most expensive probably. You need a foot pedal, your torch, and all that. So you need gas too. Yeah, be more expensive than MIG. Right away, I know that for stick welding, the initial cost is a lot cheaper than MIG and TIG, really, because there's no bottles, there's no plumbing to do, it's just 2 wires and a transformer, really. So, and a stick, of course, stick electrode. But over time, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but these, anytime you're welding, this doesn't really matter in terms of DIY as much, but anytime you're welding, what you buy in terms of weight is not the actual. This is the coating on the electrode here. That's the flux coating, and then at the end here, that right there, that is the actual filler metal. So you're not buying, when you buy a 10-pound pack of sticks, you're not buying 10 pounds worth of filler metal. You're buying 10 pounds worth of flux and filler metal. So essentially that creates what you call a deposition efficiency, I believe it's called. And so stick has one of the lowest deposition efficiencies, I believe. It's like around, maybe it's 30 to 50%, I think. Stick is pretty quick. You can move pretty quick with stick, but you can't go anywhere near the speed that MIG can. A MIG welder, when that's cranked right up, you can lay down beads like no tomorrow with that. TIG, not so much. You can still go fairly quick with TIG, just like stick. But MIG is definitely the metal sprayer of them all, I would say. But yeah, so just keep that in mind, that over time the sticks that you will be buying can get quite expensive, because the deposition efficiency of the filler you're getting is lower than that of, say, MIG. Because MIG, you're just buying spools of wire, really, and gas. So now you're kind of narrowed in on the type of welder you want to get. So now you got to keep in mind the features. What are the duties? Like, what is the duty cycle of the welder, for example? If you're in a more commercial setting and you want to lay down a whole bunch of beads all the time, or you're welding stuff or whatever, it doesn't matter. You're gonna want something with a higher duty cycle, especially on the top end, depending on the current capabilities of your machine, which is another important feature. All machines have a min and max current capability, AC and DC. Well, depending, some machines also, that's another one. Some machines don't have electrode polarity switching, or even AC or DC at all. So some welders are just AC, some are just DC positive, some are all three like this. So keep that in mind. That's this is actually really handy in terms of stuff like say for example you're on DC and you get into a corner or something and you start dealing with arc blow. That's caused by the non-switching polarity of DC and the nature of DC electricity. Essentially, it just makes magnetic fields that muck around with the plasma and blows it the wrong way anyways. So you don't want that, so then you just come over here, switch to AC. Or, I mean, hey, if you want to try, you can put it DC negative. But those are the type of things that you kind of underestimate their usefulness until you really start like understanding or learning about welding. Another important thing to keep in mind is more or less for stick welders. MIG, TIG, it doesn't really matter. So this is the what do you call open circuit voltage. So it's important for stick welders because the higher the open circuit voltage, the better arc starting capability the machine has. So when you're striking your stick, that, a lot of times conditions are not always ideal, and it's not always completely clean. Heck, maybe you're even welding through some paint or something. I don't know, but the higher the open current or open circuit voltage, the better the machine generally. So it'll start easier. Some rods actually won't even run on lower open circuit voltage machines. So I would get a welder that has a fairly decent open circuit voltage. Like 70, you can weld anything with that. There's, of course, bigger machines, higher open circuit voltages and stuff, but 50 plus is not bad. So just keep that in mind. Do some Googling for what exactly you're going to be welding and what kind of voltages you'll need, because it can vary quite a bit. Another thing you got to keep in mind is the overall size and the weight of your machine, right? So now that you're looking around for, say, a MIG welder, then a lot of them can be huge, and a lot of them can be small. So it depends on how much space you have and where you're going to put it. Not to mention the weight. Like a stick welder, this thing's like 300 some pounds, I think, 350 pounds or something. So it's not the easiest to move around, but I put it on a cart and, well, it's fine there. So yeah. Another thing is, you can get multi-process machines nowadays so this means they're digital essentially. They're not dumb machines, so to speak, where they just do one sole purpose and are kind of electromechanical components inside of them. There are a lot of in those, it's a lot of just digital inverters and stuff like that. That instead of just using a transformer, they use like IGBTs and stuff to switch at high frequencies the arc and the voltage, or the current and the voltage, to, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing stick or MIG or whatever, it can do whatever. It can do any of those. And with those comes more features like I can't remember their terms because I don't have any digital machines, but there's things like, I think it's soft start and stuff. So what that'll do is if you have that enabled, essentially it's kind of like when you first start welding, your amperage gets cranked up slightly first. You can set the duration and all that on the amperage, I'm sure. And so essentially, when you first start welding, the amperage either goes up or it goes down depending on how you set it. And it goes up just to kind of get everything set, and then it turns back to normal, your running amperage, for the optimal start, essentially. That's the other thing with multi-process welders, is that they're probably the best bang for your buck, to be honest. They are a lot of money, but it saves you the most space, and it saves you the hassle of having to have different types of plugs, or 3 different sets of leads and stuff like that, because it's one machine and it does stick, TIG, and MIG. So that's like the best of all worlds right there. So kind of now it's narrowed in, you've probably found, by the time you've gone through all this, you've probably found some welders. So now you have to consider, once you've found your perfect welder, let's say, here, I'll show you over here, you have to consider how you're going to install it. So right over here, I got a panel here. I had to install this once I got my welder. See right there, it says welder. I got a 60 amp 240 volt in there. So a lot of people underestimate this, because it can add, it'll add a couple $100 pretty easy, depending how far away from your main circuit box you are, and depending on how, say if it's in a detached garage or something. So that can add up pretty quick. Get good welding cable. Don't get some cheap whatever copper cable you found and made from some jumper cables. Get some actual nice welding cable. It's nice and flexible. It's got tons of thin strands, and most importantly, the jacket on this is really thick and it's really temperature resistant. So that'll keep you safe, because like I said, especially with stick welders, I mean, you got 70 volts there, and I mean AC would be the worst to get shocked by, but 70 volts, you get that across your chest, could kill you probably. So keep that in mind. Your stick holder, You can get tons of different styles of these. This one's a twist lock. And again, don't cheap out on these. This is a, I don't know, medium price one. It hasn't let me down. Definitely don't skimp out on a helmet though. Get either a good auto darkening one, or if you don't like those, get a just like an old style, just flip down, constant shade helmet. And the thing, a lot of people don't like these because they say they'll cause eye damage or something, but because technically when you're welding, this doesn't turn on right away. It doesn't. I don't care what helmet it is, but that doesn't matter because these, if it's a good welding helmet, which this is, inside of here, besides the shade, the UV and IR is filtered constantly, so it doesn't matter what shade you're at. So even if you get where the sensors on his don't pick up the arc and it doesn't dim, it doesn't do anything. I mean, it's bright. It's like somebody shining a bright light in your eyes, but there's no UV or IR going into your eyes. So there's no eye damage. And keep in mind when you're welding, when your head's in there, your eyes are back over in the front there. And say you're welding on say by a garage door, for example, or something that's really shiny or reflective. That light can come back in this way, and then it'll get your eyes. So keep that in mind. Ground clamp, you could probably cheap out on a ground clamp. I mean, you could probably make a ground clamp pretty easy, but again, just buy fairly decent stuff. Especially the cable though. Don't chimp out on the don't cheap out on the cable. But once you have a welder, it opens up a world of possibilities into what you can do with your shop or your whatever you're doing, really. I mean, metal all of a sudden becomes fixable. You can make frames for things. You can repair basically anything. You can welder's definitely one of the most important tools you could ever buy, I would say. So with that in mind, buy a good one. Buy one that'll outlast even you. That's what this one will do. So don't buy one you only have to buy once, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.